In the journey of life, we encounter many individuals, some uplifting, some challenging. But there are certain people whose energy is dark, draining, and disruptive. These individuals, often not recognized for what they truly are, can wreak havoc on your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. They may not have horns or a fiery gaze, but their actions and behaviors reveal them as toxic, pulling you away from your true self. Here are 7 signs to recognize when someone in your life may be casting shadows like a demon into your reality. 1. Constant manipulation, the subtle art of distortion. Constant manipulation is not something that happens in a single moment. It is an ongoing process, an ever-present force that works quietly beneath the surface, slowly infiltrating your mind and reshaping your perception of reality. It is a dance of deception, where the manipulator moves with a kind of elegant precision, weaving their words and actions in ways that leave you questioning what you know to be true. At first, it is hard to even notice, for it is so expertly disguised under the veil of care or concern. But as the days pass, it becomes increasingly clear that something is amiss. The manipulator does not attack with brute force or open confrontation. Instead, they use subtleties, small remarks, offhand comments, or casual gestures that, over time, begin to sow doubt in your mind. These are not the kind of lies that are obvious or easily exposed. No, they are the quiet, insidious kind twists of truth that distort the very fabric of your understanding. And like a gentle current eroding a mountain, the cumulative effect of this distortion slowly wears away at your sense of certainty. In a world filled with noise and confusion, the manipulator offers a false sense of clarity. They present themselves as the voice of reason, the one who knows the truth, the one who can help you understand the world around you. But in reality, they seek not to enlighten, but to control. They do not care about your truth, your experience, your perspective. Their goal is simple: to shape the world to fit their desires, to make you see things as they want you to see them. And as you begin to trust their version of events, you start to lose touch with your own sense of reality. The manipulator's words may be laced with kindness or concern, but underneath lies the constant pull of self-interest. They know how to play on your emotions, how to tap into your vulnerabilities, how to make you feel guilty for questioning their motives. They may act as though they are the only ones who truly understand you, the only ones who have your best interests at heart. Yet in every interaction, they are quietly shifting the balance of power, making you feel small, uncertain, and dependent on their approval. Over time, you may begin to doubt your own perceptions, your memories, and even your emotions. They may say things like, "Are you sure that's how it happened?" or "I don't remember it that way," until you start to question your own recollections. The result is a subtle and insidious unraveling of your own inner truth. You begin to see the world not through your own eyes, but through theirs. The clarity that once existed within you is replaced by a fog of doubt, as you lose the ability to trust your own judgment. This manipulation doesn't just change your thoughts, it alters the very way you experience the world. It creates a reality in which you are always on the defensive, always second-guessing yourself, and always looking for validation from someone else. Your mind becomes a battlefield, where the manipulator's words are the weapons that leave scars on your sense of self. The longer you stay in this web of manipulation, the harder it becomes to find your way back to the truth, to the reality you once knew to be yours. The true danger of constant manipulation is not just in the way it bends the truth. It's in how it erodes your sense of autonomy, your ability to think for yourself, your very essence. It turns you into a passive observer in your own life, a puppet whose strings are pulled by someone else's hand. Your thoughts, once independent, now bend to the will of the manipulator. Your actions, once spontaneous, are now dictated by their desires. And in this space, you become disconnected from your own voice, your own knowing, your own power. To break free from this manipulation requires an awakening, a return to your own center. It requires the courage to trust yourself again, to reclaim your own thoughts, your own truth. It means stepping out of the fog of doubt and realigning with your inner wisdom, the part of you that has always known the truth, even when others try to obscure it. Only by recognizing the manipulation for what it is can you begin to untangle yourself from its grasp and return to a life of clarity and self-trust. Constant manipulation is a slow, insidious force that chips away at your very foundation. It distorts your reality and warps your perceptions, all in the name of control. But remember, your truth is your own, and no one has the power to take it from you unless you allow it. Stand firm in your awareness, trust your perceptions, and never allow someone else to shape your world for you. You are the creator of your own reality, and no manipulator can change that unless you let them. 2. Emotional drain, the quiet theft of your vitality. Emotional drain is a subtle and often unnoticed force creeping into your life under the guise of closeness, friendship, or love. It begins imperceptibly, like a small leak in a vessel barely noticeable at first. But over time, the steady drip of energy being siphoned from you accumulates. Slowly you begin to feel tired, worn, and exhausted, as though life itself is slipping through your fingers. You may not see where it's going, but you begin to sense that something is off. The more you give, the less you have, and you find yourself constantly pouring out your energy to someone or something, only to receive nothing in return. These are the relationships, the connections that feel one-sided, where you are the giver and the other is the taker. They seem to require endless support, attention, and affection, while offering very little in return. Their needs seem to grow exponentially, as if they are endless, while yours seem to fade into the background, forgotten or overlooked. The more you give, the more they seem to ask, until you realize you are running on empty, with no resources left to sustain yourself. There is no replenishment, no balancing of the exchange. Instead, you find yourself constantly feeding a bottomless well. No matter how much energy, attention, or care you pour into it, it never fills. The more you attempt to meet their needs, the more your own needs fade into the background, unnoticed, unspoken, and unmet. This is the trap of emotional drain, the illusion that you are connected, that you are caring, when in reality you are simply depleting yourself in the process. You may give your time, your presence, your affection, your advice, your understanding, yet there is a hollow feeling left behind. It is as though the act of giving does not return to you in any form. You may even begin to feel guilty for feeling empty, as though you are being selfish for not being able to keep up the endless flow of energy they demand. This guilt, this feeling of inadequacy, only compounds the drain, making it even harder to recognize the truth that this is not a balanced relationship. This is not mutual care or connection. This is the draining of your very essence. The truth is that we are all energetic beings, and we exist in a state of constant exchange. We give and we receive, not just in material terms, but in the intangible flows of emotion, thought, and connection. However, in some relationships, this flow is disrupted, and instead of an exchange, it becomes a one-way street. This drain does not merely take away from your energy, it creates a void within you, a space of emptiness that can only be filled by you reclaiming your energy and restoring balance to the relationship. At first, you may not even realize the toll it's taking. You may be so used to offering yourself to others that you don't see the erosion happening bit by bit. One day you notice it, you feel an overwhelming fatigue, a heaviness, an emotional weight that you cannot shake. You feel disconnected, not just from others, but from your own sense of self. You can no longer recall the last time you took time for yourself, the last time you felt full, vibrant, and alive. You have become so focused on meeting the needs of another that your own have become distant, almost foreign to you. This kind of emotional drain can lead to profound disconnection, not just from others, but from yourself. It is as though you have given so much of yourself that there is nothing left. You may begin to feel invisible, unimportant, as though your own emotional well-being is secondary to the needs of others. And slowly, without realizing it, you may begin to lose touch with your own needs, desires, and boundaries. Emotional drain is the quiet thief of your vitality. It sneaks in, one small ask at a time, until you find yourself completely depleted. It is the energy-sucking presence that leaves you feeling empty, tired, and disconnected, while the other person remains ever demanding, ever needing. The longer you allow this drain to continue, the more difficult it becomes to regain your own strength. You become disoriented, unsure of what is yours and what has been taken from you. Recognizing emotional drain is the first step in reclaiming your power. It begins with awareness, a recognition that something is wrong, that your energy is being depleted in a way that is not serving you. It requires the courage to set boundaries, to say no when you need to, and to prioritize your own well-being. This is not selfishness, it is self-preservation. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and in allowing your own energy to be drained, you risk losing the essence of who you are. Healing from emotional drain is an act of returning to yourself, of filling the well that has been emptied by others. It requires reconnecting with your own needs, desires, and emotions. It means recognizing that your energy is sacred, that your emotional well-being matters, and that you are worthy of the same care and attention you so freely give to others. By doing so, you restore balance to your relationships and to yourself, and you begin to reclaim the vitality and strength that has always been yours. 3. Unnecessary chaos, the dance of disruption. Unnecessary chaos is the storm that never settles, the whirlwind that rips through your life with no purpose but to create disorder. It does not emerge from any natural or meaningful source, but from the deliberate interference of someone whose very existence seems tied to the creation of turmoil. It is the incessant stirring of the waters, the continual flicker of flames, the constant disturbance of the stillness that is needed for clarity to emerge. The chaotic force in your life is not one that seeks resolution or growth. It simply seeks to exist in a state of constant movement, always shifting, always unsettled, perpetually demanding your attention. This chaos does not come with a purpose, nor does it arise from something that could be seen as productive or life-enhancing. It is the force that constantly unsettles the natural order, creating conflict where none exists, stirring emotions where none need to be stirred. The person who brings unnecessary chaos into your life is often skilled at creating situations that appear urgent or important, yet when examined closely, they have no lasting significance. Their actions are not the result of genuine need, but of a deep-rooted compulsion to disrupt the harmony that surrounds them. Their presence is like a vibration that shakes the very foundation of calm, for they will find ways to drag you into their chaotic world. They will pull you into arguments that seem endless, provoke issues that don't need to be addressed, and escalate tensions that could otherwise dissolve on their own. The chaos they introduce is designed to divert your focus from peace, from reflection, from the natural rhythm of existence, and redirect it into confusion, frustration, and noise. The trick of unnecessary chaos is that it can often masquerade as something important, something that demands your involvement. It might come in the form of a crisis that is blown out of proportion, a drama that ensnares everyone around it. Yet when the dust settles, it becomes evident that no resolution has been found, no growth has been achieved, and no meaningful change has occurred. It is simply the act of disturbing the peace for the sake of disturbance itself. This chaos may manifest in small, seemingly inconsequential ways. It could be constant gossip, minor conflicts that are exaggerated beyond reason, or the deliberate stirring of old wounds that should have been healed long ago. It could be the incessant need for attention, the refusal to let things rest, and the demand for perpetual motion in a world that needs stillness. The person who thrives on unnecessary chaos does not seek balance, nor do they wish to bring resolution to anything. They only wish to keep the world in a state of turmoil. In the presence of unnecessary chaos, clarity is lost. You find yourself caught in a perpetual loop of reaction, forever trying to address issues that were never truly problems to begin with. The more you engage with the chaos, the more it consumes you, and the less you can see the world for what it truly is. You become entangled in their web of disruption, always chasing the next distraction, always responding to the next crisis, never pausing long enough to recognize the emptiness of the whole process. But here lies the paradox. The more chaos you allow to enter your life, the less you can hear your own inner voice. The louder the noise, the more difficult it becomes to hear the whispers of truth that guide you towards peace. The chaotic energy, always shifting and changing, becomes like a thick fog that clouds your perception of what is truly important. You lose your ability to discern what matters, what is real, and what is merely an illusion, because chaos thrives in the space between clarity and confusion. To confront unnecessary chaos is to return to stillness, to silence the noise long enough to see it for what it truly is, a distraction. A diversion from the simplicity of life as it is. It requires the awareness to step back, to refuse to engage in the endless cycle of turmoil, and to prioritize the quiet moments where clarity resides. It means refusing to be drawn into battles that do not serve you, and instead choosing to create space for peace and understanding. The true art of living in a world of unnecessary chaos is the ability to find stillness amid the storm. It is the recognition that much of the disruption in life is of our own making, a creation of the mind that seeks to avoid peace because it fears what might be found in silence. When you can learn to sit in that silence, when you can stand firm in the face of chaos without being drawn into it, you will discover a power within you that cannot be shaken by external forces. You will find that the storm will pass, as all storms do. And what remains is the quiet understanding that you are not the chaos. You are the stillness that exists beyond it. 4. Narcissism and self-centeredness, the illusion of the separate self. Narcissism and self-centeredness are not mere traits of vanity or arrogance. They are the embodiment of the belief in the separate self, the notion that one is entirely distinct from the rest of the world, isolated in a bubble of individuality. The narcissist lives in a world of mirrors, where everything that happens is reflected back upon themselves. The world is not a place to engage with. To flow through or be part of it is a stage, and they are the center of it all. Every experience is measured against their own desires, their own ego, and their own needs. The entire universe exists in relation to them, and this view distorts the very nature of reality. At the heart of narcissism is the deep-seated belief that one is the most important being in the world, that one's thoughts, feelings, and actions are the only ones that matter. This belief is not born of conscious decision, but from an unconscious attachment to the idea of separateness. To the narcissist, the world is a backdrop against which they act, a world that should reflect their desires and needs, rather than a shared space where all beings interact and contribute to the greater whole. This self-centered view distorts everything. Relationships become transactions, where others are seen not as autonomous individuals with their own lives and experiences, but as objects, tools to fulfill the narcissist's endless need for validation, admiration, and control. Every gesture, every word, every moment is turned inward to serve their sense of self-worth. The narcissist lives for recognition, craving it like a drug, but never finding true satisfaction, for no amount of praise can ever fill the emptiness created by the illusion of separateness. In this state of constant self-focus, the narcissist cannot see beyond their own reflection. They cannot understand that others have lives of their own, with their own desires, fears, and experiences. Others are simply extensions of themselves there to serve, to praise, to admire. The concept of empathy is foreign, for in their view, to acknowledge another's pain, joy, or experience would be to take away from their own. There is no room for another person's truth because the narcissist is so consumed with their own. The more a person is trapped in narcissism, the more disconnected they become from the world around them. They live in a kind of self-made prison, a world where they are always at the center, but where true connection with others is impossible. They may have many people around them, but they are not truly connected to anyone. Their relationships are hollow, as they cannot give themselves fully to another. They are always taking, always needing, but never giving in return. This creates a deep loneliness, a sense of emptiness that only deepens as they attempt to fill it with more attention, more adoration, more external validation. Narcissism breeds an endless hunger, a hunger that cannot be satisfied, for it is rooted in the fundamental misunderstanding that one can ever truly be separate from the whole. It creates a kind of existential restlessness, a gnawing feeling that no matter how much is accumulated, whether it be fame, wealth, power, or admiration, it will never be enough. The self-centered individual is always seeking, always striving, but never arriving. The goal is never reached, because the goal is rooted in an illusion, the illusion of a separate self, cut off from the flow of life, disconnected from the interconnectedness of all things. But here is the deeper truth to believe in narcissism. To buy into this illusion of separateness is to deny the very essence of what it means to be human. For we are not solitary islands floating in a vast ocean. We are frisian, we are part of the vastness itself. We are threads woven into the intricate tapestry of existence, each of us contributing to the whole, each of us interdependent. When we live in this way, we understand that our own joy, pain, and experience are intertwined with the joys and pains of others. There is no separation, no other, only the same life flowing through all things. When one is able to see through the veil of narcissism, the world changes. Others are no longer objects to be used, but beings to be understood, to be cared for, to be loved. The illusion of separateness dissolves, and with it comes a deep sense of connection, of belonging, of peace. The world is no longer a stage for the narcissist to perform on, but a shared experience, a dance in which all are equal participants. To be caught in the cycle of narcissism is to live in a prison of your own making, to exist in a world that revolves only around you. But true freedom lies not in self-centeredness, but in recognizing that we are all part of the same life, all expressions of the same universal energy. In that recognition, there is no need for constant validation or recognition, for the recognition of the interconnectedness of all things brings its own peace, its own joy, its own fulfillment. To see the world in this way is to experience life not as an isolated individual, but as a vital part of the ever-flowing current of existence itself. And in that flow there is no need for the illusion of separateness, no need from the fragile ego to grasp at fleeting moments of attention. There is only the profound realization that we are all connected, all part of the same unfolding mystery. 5. Erosion of self-worth, the slow vanishing of the self. Erosion of self-worth is not an instantaneous collapse, but a gradual, almost imperceptible fading of one's sense of value, as if the very foundation of who we are is slowly being worn away by forces unseen. It begins subtly, like a gentle wind that over time wears down the edges of a rock. At first you may not notice it. Life moves forward, and the tide of time flows relentlessly, sweeping everything along with it. But gradually, over months, years, or even decades, you begin to feel as though you are losing yourself, becoming less of who you once were, or never truly were at all. The erosion of self-worth is a process tied to the constant exposure to judgment, criticism, or neglect. It is the internalization of negative messages that others might project onto you, messages that you are not enough, that your value is conditional, that you are only as good as what others see in you. These messages come not just from the outside world, but from within, from your own mind, which begins to echo the judgments of others, and slowly you start to believe them. The story you once told yourself about your inherent worth begins to dissolve, bit by bit, until all that remains is a hollow sense of inadequacy. The most insidious part of this erosion is that it often occurs without any clear acknowledgement. It is not an event, not a singular wound that can be treated or healed. It is a constant, quiet shift in perception. Little by little, you begin to question your place in the world, your value, your purpose. You become unsure of your own voice, your own feelings, and even your right to exist in the way you do. The quiet whispering of inadequacy becomes louder until it drowns out everything else. The bright spark of who you are is dimmed by the thick layers of doubt and shame that accumulate, and eventually you forget that spark ever existed at all. At first, the erosion might be a reaction to external factors. Perhaps someone criticized you, belittled your achievements, or ignored your needs. Maybe you've experienced rejection or found yourself in an environment where you were not seen for who you truly are. These experiences slowly chip away at your sense of self. You begin to believe that you are not worthy of respect, that you are not worthy of love, or that your feelings and desires are secondary to the needs of others. And in time, this belief becomes your reality, a distorted lens through which you view the world and yourself. Your every action, your every thought begins to be shaped by the belief that you are not enough, that you are incomplete, that you are somehow broken. But the erosion of self-worth is not just about what others do or say to you. It is the internalization of the belief that you are separate, that your worth is defined by what you achieve, how others perceive you, or how well you fit into the expectations of the world. It is the idea that you are not enough simply as you are, that you must constantly strive to prove your value, to earn your place. The truth is that these external measures are fleeting, unreliable, and shallow. They offer no lasting sense of worth, for the world is in a constant state of change, and to base your value on anything external is to invite the erosion of self-worth from the very start. As this process unfolds, something more profound begins to happen. The erosion of self-worth is not just the loss of confidence or self-esteem, it is the loss of connection to your own essence. You forget who you are at the core, the vibrant, unique, and irreplaceable person you were before the world began to tell you who you should be. The layers of doubt, shame, and fear that build up over time obscure the truth of your being. You start to believe that you are a mere shadow, a reflection of others' perceptions, and not a living, breathing expression of life itself. The tragedy of the erosion of self-worth is that it causes you to forget your inherent dignity, your natural brilliance, and your capacity to contribute to the world in a way no one else can. You are no longer able to see yourself as you truly are, as a part of the greater whole, as a vital, unique expression of the universe. Instead, you begin to measure yourself against standards that were never meant to define you, and in doing so, you lose sight of your own beauty, your own value. You begin to shrink, to become smaller and smaller, until you cannot see beyond the walls of the story you've created about yourself. To reclaim your self-worth is to return to a state of remembering. It is to reconnect with the truth of who you are, beyond the judgments and the expectations, beyond the labels and the criticisms. It is to recognize that your worth is not something that can be lost or earned, it simply is. It exists in the very fact of your being, in the simple reality that you are alive, that you are here, that you are an irreplaceable part of the great unfolding of existence. To reclaim your self-worth is to peel away the layers of doubt, to dismantle the false stories that have taken hold, and to remember that you are enough, just as you are. The erosion of self-worth is a gradual process, but so too is the reclamation. It begins with small acts of self-compassion, of choosing to honor your needs, of letting go of the need to prove yourself to others. It involves learning to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to honor your own feelings, your own desires, your own truth. The more you embrace the fullness of who you are, the more you begin to heal the erosion. The more you connect with the essence of your being, the more you realize that there was never anything to lose in the first place. Your worth is inherent, and no external force can ever diminish it. It simply is, and always has been yours to claim. 6. Lack of empathy, the disconnect from the pulse of life. Lack of empathy is not just the inability to understand another's pain or joy, it is the absence of the deep recognition that we are not separate from one another, that the experiences of others are inextricably linked to our own. It is the closing of the heart, the shutting off of the flow of compassion that naturally arises when we see ourselves as interconnected with all beings. Empathy is not a learned behavior, it is an innate response, a direct recognition of our shared humanity. And when this connection is severed, we begin to live in a world where others become invisible, their feelings, struggles, and dreams irrelevant to our own existence. To lack empathy is to walk through life with blinders on, unable or unwilling to truly see the world as it is for others. It is to live as though you are the only person in the world whose pain matters, whose experiences have significance. Those around you become mere shadows, projections of your own desires, existing not as individuals with their own needs and feelings, but as objects to be used, manipulated, or ignored. The lack of empathy creates a wall between you and the rest of the world. A wall so thick and impermeable that you cannot feel the suffering or the joy of those around you. You are cut off from the very pulse of life, the rhythmic flow of give and take, of understanding and compassion that binds us all together. When empathy is absent, every relationship becomes transactional. There is no room for true connection, no space for vulnerability, for shared experience. People become either tools for personal gain or obstacles to be overcome, but never fellow travelers on the same journey. The other person's humanity is overlooked, dismissed, or outright rejected in favor of the needs of the self. Emotions are no longer to be shared or witnessed, but rather to be manipulated, judged, or exploited. The world becomes a barren place where all we see are reflections of our own desires and fears, and we cannot hear the cries of others because we are too absorbed in our own. But the absence of empathy is not a natural state. It arises from a deep disconnection, from a belief that we are separate, that the suffering of others is not our own, that their joy or pain has no impact on us. This belief stems from the illusion of individualism, the notion that each person is an island, isolated and independent. When we forget that we are all woven together in the same fabric of existence, we begin to forget how to feel for others. The belief that our own happiness is the only thing that matters leads us to live in a way that disregards the feelings, the needs, and the experiences of others. This lack of empathy is not something that happens overnight. It is a slow, subtle process, often fueled by neglect, by the constant demands of the self, and by a refusal to acknowledge the interconnectedness of life. It can arise from a history of pain, from wounds that have never been healed, from experiences that have hardened the heart and closed it off to the world. It is a defense mechanism, a way of shutting down to protect oneself from the vulnerability that comes with truly understanding another's experience. But in the act of closing off, we also close ourselves off from the fullness of life, from the depth of human connection, and from the possibility of true understanding. To live without empathy is to exist in a world where everything is reduced to self-interest, where there is no room for the profound beauty of shared experience. It is to live in a world where others are objects, their pain and joy inconsequential, and their humanity invisible. The consequences of this lack of empathy are far-reaching, for when we cannot feel for others, we cannot build relationships of trust, of love, of support. We cannot connect in any real sense, and the world becomes fragmented, isolated, and empty. The beauty of empathy is that it requires no effort, no contrived effort to understand or help. It is simply the natural recognition that the other is not so different from oneself, that we are all part of the same web, that we all share in the human condition. To understand another's pain is to recognize that we too have known suffering. To experience another's joy is to feel the same joy within ourselves. Empathy is the quiet understanding that life flows through all of us, and that by recognizing the feelings and experiences of others, we also recognize the deepest truths of our own existence. The absence of empathy leaves us isolated, but the presence of empathy connects us in ways that transcend the individual, that dissolve the boundaries between self and other. Empathy is the bridge that spans the gaps between souls, that allows us to share in the richness of human experience, to stand in the place of another and feel with them. It is the unspoken bond that unites us in a world that is far too often divided. And when we lack empathy, we deny ourselves the most profound connection we can have with others, the ability to simply be with them, to witness their humanity, and to recognize that in every moment we are all in this together. In truth, to lack empathy is to deny the essence of our shared existence, and to live in a world where we are not only blind to others, but also to ourselves. For the heart that cannot feel for others is a heart that has become distant from its own true nature. The world outside is a reflection of the world within. And when we lose the ability to connect with others, we also lose the ability to connect with our own soul. We are left adrift, isolated in our own consciousness, unable to touch the world as it truly is. But when empathy is present, the world comes alive, full of color, full of feeling, full of life. We are no longer alone in the vast expanse of existence, but part of the great unfolding dance of humanity. 7. Addictive pull, the unseen force that binds us. Addiction is not just the pursuit of pleasure or the need for relief from pain. It is the magnetic, unseen force that draws us into the illusion of fulfillment, time and again, even as it leaves us empty. The addictive pull is like a gravitational force that pulls us into a never-ending cycle of craving, consumption, and temporary satisfaction, only to leave us more insatiable, more restless, more lost. It operates quietly in the shadows of our mind, feeding off our fears, our desires, and our need to escape the present moment. It convinces us that there is something out there, something beyond ourselves, that will fill the hollow space within. But the more we reach for it, the more elusive it becomes. This pull does not always appear as something overtly destructive. It can manifest in many ways: the compulsion to check your phone, the need for constant validation, the desire for more money, or the craving for status and recognition. These pulls can seem innocuous, even harmless at first, but they are all part of the same underlying mechanism. They arise from the belief that we are incomplete, that something is missing, that the world must provide us with something we do not have. It is the idea that our happiness, our peace, our fulfillment lies somewhere outside of ourselves, in objects, experiences, or other people. And so we chase after them, unable to see that in doing so, we only perpetuate the very emptiness we seek to escape. At the heart of addiction is the false belief that we are separate from the flow of life, that we are not enough as we are, and that we must grasp at something external to feel whole. This belief creates a vacuum within us, a space that longs to be filled. But no matter what we consume, whether it be food, drugs, work, relationships, or material possessions, there is always a sense that it is never enough. The satisfaction is fleeting, the high is temporary, and soon we are left wanting more. The cycle repeats each time with more intensity, each time leaving us more disillusioned, more lost, more distant from the truth of who we are. Addiction thrives on this sense of dissatisfaction, on the belief that we can never truly be at peace, that we must always be striving, always be seeking, always be reaching for something just beyond our grasp. It plays on our fears, the fear of being alone, of being insignificant, of not mattering, and convinces us that the answer lies in external achievement, in accumulation, in the next high, the next validation, the next escape. We become trapped in a cycle of endless pursuit, never fully able to experience the present moment. never able to fully embrace who we are, because we are constantly reaching for something that can never truly satisfy us. This addictive pull is not simply a matter of willpower or self-discipline. It is not about just giving up the things we crave or resisting temptation. It is about realizing the deeper truth that the pull itself is based on a false premise that we are incomplete, that we are separate, that we must look outside ourselves for fulfillment. The more we buy into this story, the stronger the pull becomes. We become enslaved to it, perpetuating the cycle through our own beliefs, through our own actions, through our own perceptions. To break free from this pull, we must begin by recognizing it for what it is: an illusion, a distraction, a false belief. The pull is not reality, it is a construction of the mind born from the idea that we are somehow separate from the whole, that we must strive to be something we are not. In truth, we are not separate from the flow of life. We are part of it, intrinsically connected to the world and to every other being. The more we can see this truth, the less power the addictive pull has over us. We begin to realize that there is no need to seek fulfillment in external sources, for fulfillment arises naturally when we accept ourselves as we are, when we are present with the flow of life, when we stop grasping and start living. The addictive pull is not the enemy, it is a reflection of our internal state, a symptom of our disconnection from our true nature. When we begin to understand this, the pull begins to lose its power. We see that we do not need anything outside of ourselves to complete us, to make us whole, to make us happy. We are already whole, already complete, already enough. The craving, the constant reaching, the chasing after things, it all falls away when we realize that the answer was never out there, but within us. In that realization, the pull dissipates. We are no longer slaves to our desires, no longer driven by the need to escape, to fill a void, to find something we believe is missing. We begin to experience life as it is, in its fullness, without the need for more. We embrace the present moment, just as it is, and in doing so, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of craving and consumption. In that freedom, we discover peace, contentment, and the joy that arises when we stop searching for fulfillment outside of ourselves and simply allow ourselves to be who we truly are. Addiction, in all its forms, is not something to fight against, but something to understand. It is a reflection of our disconnection from the truth of who we are. Once we recognize that truth, the pull loses its power, and we are free to live in harmony with the flow of life, no longer chasing after fleeting moments of satisfaction, but instead finding contentment in simply being. And in this we find the liberation we've always sought, not in external things, but in the peace that arises when we realize there is nothing we need to become, nothing we need to achieve, nothing we need to chase. We are already whole. In the end, we realize that these signs are not mere external behaviors, they are reflections of deeper, unseen forces at play within ourselves and others. The presence of manipulation, emotional drain, chaos, narcissism, and a lack of empathy all point to a profound disconnection from the essential truth of life, that we are interconnected, that we are whole as we are. The addictive pull is but a symptom of the belief that we are incomplete. To see these signs is not to cast judgment, but to cultivate awareness, for in awareness there is liberation. When we recognize these patterns, we have the power to step out of the cycle, to reclaim our sense of self-worth, and to remember that we are part of a greater, unbroken whole. True freedom arises not from escaping the world, but by embracing it with an open heart and a deep sense of understanding.